1. My husband and I bought tickets for a concert at MSG back in February. A few months after purchasing the tickets, we decided to make it a long weekend trip, since we haven't done anything too exciting together for about a year. We were planning on spending Thursday to Sunday doing all the touristy things, since I had never been to New York City. I definitely wanted to see the Statue of Liberty, but everything was so expensive. Luckily, I found a free ferry that would take us right past it. Perfect. That Friday, we made our way to the ferry terminal. We got hot dogs while waiting to board, looking out the huge window towards the Statue of Liberty. All was well. We boarded, no problems. Got a nice rail spot on the side facing away from the statue because the other side was so crowded. We weren't too worried because we would be riding the ferry back again after we explored Staten Island for a while. As the boat began to dock, the crowd moved towards the exit of the boat, and so did we. It was packed tight, shoulder to shoulder. We shuffled our way out. Just as we stepped off the boat, I saw this man out of the corner of my eye with his phone pointed towards me. He was maybe in his mid to late 30s. He was moderately handsome. He looked to be from the Middle East, like Israel, wearing a U.S. Polo Association ball cap. Let me set the scene. We are all walking through a guided walkway to the terminal. It's pretty crowded. My husband is walking right next to me on my right side, and this guy is on his right side. No joke, this guy was walking shoulder to shoulder with my husband and is looking forward, but holding his phone up, filming in my direction, pretending like he wasn't. At first I was like, oh, maybe he's filming all the people leaving the ferry. Maybe like a time-lapse or something. Don't be paranoid. But it just kept on going, and it looked like it was directly at me. I got so uncomfortable I put my hand up to cover my face. I took my husband's hand and asked to slow down. I asked my husband if he noticed this guy, and he did. When we slowed down, the guy ended up a few steps ahead of us, and I kid you not, this guy held his phone on his side and continued to film directly at us while pretending to look forward. This is when my husband decided to confront the guy. Mind you, we are still walking in a crowd. He said to him, "Excuse me, but is there a reason why you're filming us, sir?" But the guy just stared at him, then looked away, no response, nothing. Maybe he didn't speak English. We kept walking. It kept happening. I just held my husband's hand and held my other hand kind of covering my face. I was so creeped out. Once we were in the terminal, you could either go right and exit to the island, or go straight up some ramps. We were so freaked out. I was like, babe, we are going this way now. And we walked away up these ramps to try and let him drift off with the crowd and exit. The top of the ramps were buses. We didn't plan on getting a bus. We weren't sure if they were tour-guided buses or what. It didn't look like we could technically exit from there, so we waited a few minutes to make sure we lost the guy, and then headed back into the terminal shopping area. It was pretty empty. It looked kind of like a mall with a gift shop, a little convenience store, ATM, etc. We stood right in the middle of this almost empty terminal area, while my husband looked up some things to do in Staten Island. Then I saw him again. He walked like 10 feet away from us, still pointing his phone at us. I got ridiculously panicked and was like, we have to go, he's here, still. At this point, it was painfully obvious that he was filming us. My husband wanted to ignore him and pretend like he's not there just to see what he does. I tried. But he was barely lurking right there recording us still. I decided to make intense eye contact, like, I see you, stop doing this eye contact. He then drifts over to the ATM with his phone still up. And while looking at what he was filming on his phone, he pretends to push buttons on the ATM. No card. Not even looking at the ATM, just pretending to use it while looking at us and filming. I grabbed my husband's arm and was like, okay, we are leaving now. We went back to the mass of people waiting to get back on the ferry. There were like 3 police officers and a K9. We stood behind them, watching the doors the entire time to see if he came back in. If I saw him come back in, I was going to grab one of the police officers, but we didn't see him. The ferry runs every 25 to 30 minutes, so we had to stand there and wait. We were so panicked. A family from England wanted to strike up a conversation with us about their vacation, but I was so damn focused on watching for this guy, I couldn't invest myself in their conversation. From waiting on the ferry to the ferry ride itself back to NYC, to 3 hours after we got off that ferry, we were constantly looking over our shoulders to see if the guy was still following us. I have never felt so uneasy in my life. I felt like something horrible was going to happen, and I couldn't shake it. Was I being paranoid? I really don't think so, but I'll never know for sure. Was this someone that wanted to hurt us or rob us, human trafficking? Just some fucking weirdo filming people to get a rise? I have no idea. But some man out there has so much footage of me it makes me sick to my stomach. Man on the Staten Island ferry, let's not meet. Ever. 2. This kind of thing is well beyond my scope of normal, so please bear with me. It happened a few hours ago, and I'm pretty sure it's been less than 10 minutes since my heartbeat returned to its usual speed. I am blind. Totally and completely. No light or shadows, blind from age 4. That means different things for travel. If I'm out with friends, it's not uncommon to have strangers approaching my friends and thanking them for how nice they are, or even handing them money. I know, California, what are you going to do? If I'm out alone, it is not uncommon to be approached or even followed for a small ways, and asked where I'm going and if I needed help getting there. The thing is, I'm not especially talkative between points A and B, so unless I actually do need help, I give a firm and concise, "I'm fine, thank you." And that's usually the end of it. Tonight was an entirely different animal. So I live about 2 blocks away from my local 7-Eleven, where I go once or twice a day on weekends to refill my double gulp. I walk up 4th to Walnut and make a left without crossing it, putting Walnut to my right, 4th behind me, and the block to my left. First I pass the corner house, then a big parking lot for customers of the Domino's Pizza, and the 7-Eleven in question. I usually turn into the parking lot and trail along the front of the Domino's until I reach the 7-Eleven, because I don't like walking that far with busy Walnut traffic on my right and wide open space to my left. It's a route I've probably walked 100 times. Tonight I was in a pretty good mood, just walking along humming Shake Machine by Paul and Storm to myself, while of course remaining as attuned to my surroundings as necessary. I made a left at Walnut Lake like always, and passed in front of the house, from whose direction I heard some whispering. Nothing I could really make out, but it was loud enough to hear over the cars rushing past on my other side. Weird, I thought, and continued on my way. As I reached the parking lot and I turned left into it, I started thinking about it. I had only heard one voice whispering. I wondered why, and immediately started thinking of short story ideas involving people whispering to themselves. Maybe a mad soothsayer, or a thief guild master whispering riddles through a metal grate in the floor of an alleyway to an applicant. Maybe something creepy, like a ghost that cannot find peace until— wait, am I remembering the whispering that vividly? Or am I actually hearing it? It's getting close. Holy fuck, there are hands on my arms and shoulder! I'm not too imposing. Not a pushover. I'm 5'9" and strong but a little chubby. I've survived a few dust-ups I've been involved in, but imagine thinking about spooky things and realizing the whispering you've heard a few minutes before is not just in your memory but in your left ear, and that the source of that whispering was able to get close enough to put hands on you, whispering all the while. I screamed, loud. Remember knocking Johnny Cage into the acid circa 1994? That's what it sounded like. My whole body tensed up, and I turned quickly to the left, ready to sweep or trip or do something else I learned in high school judo, and foolishly haven't practiced since. My right knee and cane came up against a soft body, whose hands were straight up holding my left arm and shoulder. It was a woman. I could tell by the whispers I could understand, now that she was up close and touching me. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Go on, keep moving, don't slow down, never slow down. They'll never slow down, they're after us, especially you. Go on, and onward." Once I could think again, I sort of shrugged off her hand and panted through my usual dismissive "thank you, now please go away" spiel. She stayed on me, you guys, hand on my back like I was her prom date, and not the dude she made very thankful he decided to wear his yellow pants. I'm fine, I'm fine." I must have told her half a dozen times, to which she very vehemently whispered, "No, no, you're not fine, you're not okay. Nothing is okay. Go straight, go straight. Be careful, there's a pole, you're not fine, hurry." I managed to lose her by stepping into one of those dividers they have with plants and stuff in the middle. I straight up stepped over, kicked my way through some bushes to get out of the Domino side of the parking lot and into the 7-Eleven side. And I guess she had a little bit of trouble there because that's where she let go of me. Of course, me losing her is worlds apart from her losing me. I had broken physical contact, but there's no way in hell she saw me go over that divider and was like, "Damn, well, maybe next time." While I was paying for my drink, I asked the guy at the counter if he saw me approaching the store. He said no, so I told him about what happened. His co-worker immediately went, "Shit, that sounds like Tiffany." I asked, "Who's Tiffany? Is she dangerous? Is it drugs? Is this The Shining?" I have so many questions right now. They didn't have answers for me, beyond that she's a recent addition to the scenery, and has freaked out a handful of customers to the point of having the cops called on her a couple times. Apparently she follows people, but this is downtown in a college town. I'm probably the first she's caught up with. They asked me if I wanted the cops called on her, and I said no. By that point I was starting to feel silly and just wanted to take my soda and go home. When I stepped back out, she was sitting on the ground next to the door and kind of held my knee for a split second before I freaked out afresh and booked it away from the 7-Eleven and back to the edge of the parking lot. I didn't slow down until I was in front of the house where I first heard her whispering. Then I heard a few staggering footsteps from the back toward the parking lot, and very, very quickly made my way home. Now I'm afraid I'm going to answer the phone and hear her on the line, or maybe outside my window. I mean, I live 2 blocks away. Logically, I know none of that is likely to happen, still it's spooky. A friend suggested maybe it was a Halloween prank. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure this is the birthplace of the affirmative consent form. People don't touch other people like that here. Without jumping through all the right hoops and signing forms in triplicate before 3 notaries, 2 reporters, and the head of campus security. I don't know what she wanted. Maybe something weird, maybe nothing at all. But I think I'll be going to Exxon for the next little bit. Hey, creepy whispering lady. I go home now, please no follow. 3. I met him in high school when we were both 17. He was my first serious boyfriend, and I was naive. Boys had never paid much attention to me before, so it was a nerve-wracking thing for me, and I didn't really know about any red flags. We didn't really have that much money for dating, so we would hang out in a converted shed or house in his backyard. He used to rant about how all women were whores, that his dream was to be a serial killer. He would actually watch documentaries about different prisons to see which one he would like the best, if he were ever caught. He constantly complained about his ex cheating on him and breaking up with him. He had bad acne, which he was convinced everyone stared at. He started insisting I wore very loose clothes, even complaining if the wind blew against me, causing my breasts to stick out through the fabric. He'd get pissed if I accidentally touched his face or looked at him wrong. He would threaten to hurt me and himself if I ever left him. His father had been abusive towards him, once right in front of me. He was paranoid and refused to let me in the house, even to use the bathroom. He was also convinced my parents were super rich and looked down on them, and I was just with their son to annoy my family. We were together for a few years, and had grown apart. I wanted to move up in my life, go to college, work, etc., but he was convinced all of that was sinful and wrong. He would much rather live off the government. He was still not over his ex, still convinced all women were whores. He started to drink constantly. I finally decided to break up with him, which went over surprisingly well. Except, of course, for his dad trying to convince him that he needed to sue me for half the stuff in our apartment, all of which I bought, and demand alimony because, you know, clearly I was super rich. Ex refused to do that and moved back into his parents' home, where he still lives 13 years later. Well, several years pass. I had met a new man, and we had dated for a while, and we were engaged. We decided to move back to my home state, and my parents allowed us to stay at their house while we looked for an apartment. We were happily spending our time working, wedding planning, and house searching. Our street is set off from any main roads, so no one really goes down it unless they're living there or visiting someone living there. A few weeks after we started staying there, my mom had returned home from running some errands. She mentioned seeing X walking down the street. I thought it was odd, but figured he might have just taken the road to go to the library, as he hated walking on main roads, because all drivers were judging him. We also saw him a few more times after that. So one day my fiancé was out at work. I had the day off and was at home starting to pack things. We had found an apartment and would be moving in the following week. I took a break to take the dog out front to use the bathroom. Our back fence had been knocked down in a storm a few days before. As the dog is doing her thing, I see him approaching.
Hey.
What are you doing here?
Well, I've seen your car around. I've been thinking. We've both been with other people. You had your fun. We can be together again.
No, I broke up with you. I'm engaged now. I'm happy. Please leave. I take the dog back inside and lock the door. I watched as he waited outside the door for a few minutes before he walked off. My mom returned home a little while later, and I explained what happened. It upset her. She picked up her phone and called him. She told him not to come around anymore, and that it was very inappropriate. Things were quiet for a couple of years, at least until I changed my Facebook profile picture to a photo of just me instead of the previous one featuring my husband and me. That's when he added me and started messaging me. I ignored them and blocked him. He started making new profiles. Each one's advocating harming women, him talking about hurting himself and random women. I kept blocking. He seemed to give up after a bit, as I stopped hearing anything except for the occasional random message and block. Husband and I had a couple kids. I decided to stay at home with them to save on childcare costs, since it would have cost more to put both in daycare than I was earning. We have a neighbor who runs a daycare, and she offered to take them for a day a week, just so I could have a break from taking care of kids. We agreed, and I would drop them off on their day and try to get things done. Well, one day while they're there at the daycare, I go into the grocery store, and there is X walking out the door as I walk in. I can feel him glaring at me while I pretend not to notice him. I do my shopping, keeping an eye out. I ask an employee to please come to my car with me because I didn't feel comfortable. Fortunately, X has left. I return home and try to put it out of my mind as I continue on the rest of the day. That night I have several messages from him on Facebook, indicating he saw that I was alone at the store and that he needs a girlfriend. I block him again and hear nothing more on the topic. A few months pass. I am driving down the road to my apartment on my way home from work, when I pass X's father riding a bike down the road. He was coming the opposite way that I was driving. As I approach the turn to my complex, I see that X's father has turned around and is slowly riding his bike behind me. I turn into the complex, and he does the same, stopping his bike and watching me. I continue driving and pull into the small alcove hidden from his view. I see him slowly riding the bike, looking around for my car before turning back around and going the way he came from. I left the area and went back to my job and waited a while. I returned home and talked to the husband about what happened. We're not sure if we can file a restraining order against both at this point, but we are planning on a move soon. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories. Episode 438. And yes, before anyone asks, even though you're already typing it in the comments, seriously stop typing right now. I'm about to address the very thing you're talking about. You're still typing. Never mind, I'll keep going. I did have to remove the video and correct it and put it back up because I got the number wrong. The reason for that was because the last video I did would have been 438 and ended up being 4 stories instead, so obviously the numbering didn't apply. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And also, I'd like to give a special shout out to the author of story number 2. They have a YouTube channel, I think some of you might be interested in. Padded Cell Audios is the name of the channel. They've got a number of videos up there, shorts and the like. Looks to be original content. Last video was a memoriam for Sid Haig. That would be the actor, best known for working with Rob Zombie. It looks like the channel's updated fairly frequently, and I encourage you to check it out. You might find something you like there. Okay, where are we now? This will be Monday. What date will it be, actually? It will be the 14th. Right. Okay, this is what I'm proposing. So I've got time to get things ready for Halloween. I'm going to do that on Halloween week, which is usually when the Glitch video would go up. So I'm going to push Glitch Monthly number 4 back to the 7th of November. With an eye to actually then getting one out at the end of that month, because there's no other special projects in November. Unless you want me to try and put together a Guy Fawkes special, which isn't completely out of the realms of possibility, but no. Stop giving myself ideas. I've got many other things to be working on. Of course, when I say there's no other special projects, I'm not including the Jack and Andy adventures and the next chapter of Dracula. Those are ongoing and always in my mind to be doing, and we shall try and get one of those done as soon as possible. But yeah, that's currently the plan for the schedule for the channel, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.